Alright guys, today we have some potentially very exciting PlayStation 5 news and information to go over and talk about, because yesterday a patent was just discovered, and this patent actually talks about full backwards compatibility with PS3, PS2, and PS1 titles. But there are a few things about it that certainly pose multiple questions and leave us wondering exactly what Sony might be doing with this, or what they might be thinking about doing when it comes to the PlayStation 5. And obviously I want to take some time to talk about this, relay the info to you guys, and give my thoughts on it, because full backwards compatibility is something that we have been talking about for quite some time. There's been a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, just a lot of different conversations surrounding this, because it's something that people do care about. Now, you know my stance on backwards compatibility. It is the cherry on top, or the sprinkles on top. It's not the cake. It's not even the icing on the cake for me, but it's something that is certainly welcome and I would never complain about, and just enhances the overall package. So that's how I feel about backwards compatibility, but I know that there's a lot of people who really want to know what Sony's plans are beyond PS4. So we're talking a little bit about that, and also other things discovered in this patent have to do with the PlayStation 5 store and how apparently Sony will let you demo each game that you want to play. Like, you'll just literally be able to stream like a minute or maybe a couple minute long demo to try out a game before you buy it. And there's also something else that's interesting, where they plan to maybe implement this feature where you can literally cut out a certain section of a game and share it with a friend or somebody else to let them try it and play it out, which is really interesting. So yeah, this patent has a lot going on for it. So this is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. If you could do me a big favor, make sure you hit the like button to help the video out and show your support. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future content, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you can be notified immediately when a video goes live. So this comes from Twitter user Renka Schedule, and there are a few things that were translated here, but let's start with the backwards compatibility, because I know that's probably a thing that most of you are interested in. SIE PS5 make a note of the patent information. A large number of game titles across PS1, PS2, PS3, and various generations of game consoles can be stored and used via the cloud gaming library. These games can be run on a virtual machine or a virtual console that mimics the operating system associated with each game console. Now, that is a lot, and it's very significant. And the truth is, a lot of people are trying to figure out what exactly this means, because the patent doesn't really describe every single minute detail. It doesn't tell you exactly how these games are going to be run. People are assuming and jumping to conclusions that, well, because they're mentioning games being stored via cloud gaming or having a cloud gaming library, that automatically means PlayStation Now. But this is a little bit strange to me, because that's kind of already what we get with PlayStation Now. The only real difference here, based off of this patent, would be that Sony found a way to emulate PS3 games rather than having to run them natively on like PlayStation 3 server blades, right, through PlayStation Now, which would certainly help things. But at that point, it brings up the question, wait, doesn't that solve the backwards compatibility problem? Doesn't that mean you could just implement that emulation into the PlayStation 5 and to every PlayStation 5 console and not have to lock it behind PlayStation Now? And yeah, when you think of it that way, it makes you think, well, why would Sony lock something like this? Why would they lock backwards compatibility to the cloud? And they might not be. And that's what people, I think, are not really fully understanding about this patent, because if you go to the second part here, it tells you how the games are going to be run. Now, they don't explicitly say that it's going to be run through the PlayStation 5 or it can be run through the PlayStation 5. It just tells you that these games will be running on a virtual console. It will be emulation. And it's talking about emulation for not just PS1 and PS2, which I believe PlayStation Now already does, but most critically, PlayStation 3, which we know is infamous for being difficult, especially when it comes to emulation. And it's something that if Sony were to actually achieve this, they would have had to start work on it, a while ago. And we've had past patents and stuff that kind of hinted at it. But, I want to read something here that I came across, or at least some of my Twitter followers actually sent it to me. It seems like it's some type of response that somebody made to this patent. And unfortunately, I don't have the individual's name. I literally just have the text response. So Yeah, I don't know who wrote this, but let me read it to you because it does pose an interesting question. This is interesting for multiple reasons. First reason being that this is simply a patent and nothing more. So it's possible that nothing could come from this, but it's also a pretty fleshed out patent, so keep that in mind. Second reason being the quote, various generations of game consoles can be stored and used via the cloud gaming library. Now this has people really angry because they're like, oh, I have to do this through PlayStation Now and stream my games or stream the games. But think of this for a second. Cloud gaming library doesn't necessarily mean that the games need to be streamed from the cloud. The Xbox One has digital versions of original Xbox and Xbox 360 games on their shop in the cloud. And the way it works there is that discs basically act as keys for the games. Now, nothing in this patent really gives any clear info about how the games will actually function. Rather, it suggests the library on top of the VMs that will be used for each system. This is all speculation and I could be wrong, but in a perfect world, this is the beginning of our backwards compatibility in the same vein of the Xbox One and how it was handled. Don't quote me on this. This is just what I believe would be the best case scenario for the situation. It would be another version of PlayStation. It could be another version of PlayStation Now, but I'm really crossing my fingers here for physical implementation like we see with the Xbox One. And so that's the thing about this patent, guys, is it goes one of two ways. We don't know exactly what Sony is planning to do with this, because one way is they're just deciding to lock this to PlayStation Now. And to me, that just doesn't make sense, because the big question I had, that as far as I know, and somebody please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about this, but I don't think I am because I tried to look into it the best I could. For me, logically speaking, the only reason, well, I mean, there's two reasons, but the only actual practical reason that Sony would decide we have to lock backwards compatibility with PS3, PS2, and PS1 to PlayStation Now, I thought maybe they would want to do that because it would be a way to sidestep the arduous process of having to relicense and recertify all of these games. But looking into it, it seems that even if Sony did decide to do that, they would still have to go through that process, as far as I'm aware. And so you have to understand that Sony's undertaking of this, it's for one reason and one reason only, and you can't be naive about this. It's to monetize it, it's to make profit off of it, and it can be a win-win situation, just like we see with the Xbox One, because that's exactly what Microsoft did. So when I realized that, wait, you're telling me that if they were to lock this backwards compatibility behind PlayStation Now, you're telling me that they would still have to go through the same massive undertaking and process of relicensing and recertifying each game for each generation, then what would be the point of locking it behind PlayStation Now? And the only other reason, and this could be a possibility, it just, to me, it doesn't make sense because Sony would have to be aware of how angry this would make people. The only reason they would do that is to grow PlayStation Now and basically force people to where if you want to utilize full backwards compatibility, you have to do it through PlayStation Now, and that would be a big boost in the PlayStation Now service, right? That's a possibility. We can't discount that, but this is why, to me, I'm looking at this individual's comment, and it does make sense because it's like, if what we're reading here is true, there is now emulation for PS3, PS2, and PS1. Why can't that just be built in directly to the PlayStation 5? So if you buy a PlayStation 5 console, right, like if you do have the discs, you can play them through the discs, but Sony will also offer on their storefront the ability to purchase these games. And while the library would most likely be limited, and that I think is the only real problem here, they would have to kind of work over time, just like Microsoft has to build that library, but they could definitely do it. And it would be worth it if they could monetize it, in my opinion. To me, this seems like this could actually be the first real indication of full backwards compatibility. And this is something, again, I have to end this before we talk about the rest of this patent, that we've been hearing these rumors for a long time. Like, Sony has not outwardly denied this. It's kind of interesting that this patent is apparently being discovered not too long after a Sony spokesperson in Japan said that they can't really say anything right now about backwards compatibility with older generations other than PS4. They didn't deny it. They didn't say it's not happening, but they didn't confirm it. And so it left people thinking, oh, wait, is this maybe, is this hinting that we can expect something? And then we get this patent that somebody's discovering. And so, yeah, guys, I don't know. I'm going to be really interested to see what you guys have to say, because it seems like this is just one of those things where until we get more information, all we can really do is speculate based off of the little information we do have. So let me know what you think we may be looking at here. Do you think that this is the beginning of full backwards compatibility and we're going to see Sony, take up the process just like Microsoft did with the Xbox One for the PS5? Or do you think that this is just really a patent that's letting us know that Sony basically upgraded their server blades to PS5 server blades for PlayStation Now, but they found a way to emulate PS3, PS2, and PS1 games, and it will just be locked behind that? Let me know down in the comments below. But just to talk about the rest of the patent here, or some other really interesting information, it has to do with the PlayStation 5 store, or just the PlayStation store in general. And it says here, when you move to the game icon, a simple image will be played. It is also possible to play video. Trial version can also be started. Trial version data exists on the cloud and can be played immediately after selection. You can also purchase a mini version that you can play. If it is interesting, buy the main game. Both can be played instantly from the cloud. Now, this is extremely interesting, because what this is essentially saying is that when you go onto the PlayStation Store on the PlayStation 5, you will literally be able to demo every single game. Now, I would assume because they're breaking it up here, there's basically a free version of a demo and a paid version. This sounds like they're just basically going to implement PlayStation Now into the store. This is why I believe that basically this patent in general, one thing it is confirming is that Sony obviously is going to be upgrading their server blades to putting PS5s in there so people can do this, right? And so I'm seeing a situation here where if you go on the PlayStation Store, maybe you'll be able to play a free 1-minute demo, just 1 minute, where it's just a small sliver of a game that maybe the developer picks out. And again, this sounds like stuff that developers may have to opt into. I don't know if this is going to just apply to every game. Like, I don't see Sony mandating this, but it might be really good for developers to want to do this, because it's a really good way to sell your game. Let people try it out before they buy it, a free 1-minute demo. But then they say there's also mini versions. Now, this is interesting because it sounds like to me you'll be able to basically rent a game for maybe, let's just say, like $2 for an hour or something like that, or maybe $1 for an hour to play it for that hour. And then, after that hour, if you decide you like it, you can buy the game in full and download it. Obviously, you'll be doing it through streaming. And if not, then whatever, you paid $1 and you got to play the game for an hour. To me, that's really interesting. And this could be like a really big thing that Sony's onto here that developers may really end up loving, because to me, this sounds way better than just going into the PlayStation Store and seeing some kind of CGI trailer or something like that. Like, just let me play the game, even if it's for a minute, and I'll know pretty quickly whether or not I'm interested in it based off of how the game feels to play. But finally here, we're talking about the create button, apparently, and how there's this type of, well, let me just read it to you. It says, cut gameplay, minigame, share, record the play situation during gameplay and analyze the area of interest. Create a mini game limited to specific scenes. You can also save it onto the cloud and share it with other users to play. So essentially what this boils down to is you will be able to maybe cut out certain gameplay sections, like just let's imagine a mini boss battle that takes a couple minutes. You can apparently, if this actually ends up being a thing, cut that out and literally share that gameplay segment to other people to allow them to play it. Now, there's a lot of really interesting questions that this brings up, like how many times can you do this for a single game? Can you do it for spoiler sections? And how many times can you share a section of a game to your friend? I'm sure there will be, pretty strict limitations for this. But again, this just seems like another way to let people be able to kind of interact with, PlayStation Now, leveraging that, and allow people to kind of have a new way to interact with games before they buy them, to possibly incentivize them and, win them over. Like, hey, buy our game, and it just sounds like what this is going to be used for is if I'm playing a game and I come across this really awesome part and I'm like, oh man, like I got to show this to somebody. And I cut out like a minute or two of that really awesome part, send it to my friend, let them play it. They play those 2 minutes and they're like, whoa, like that was awesome. I need to go buy this game now. Then they just got a game sale, and I basically just advertised that game for them. So this is really interesting stuff, guys, and I'm going to be really interested to see what is implemented into the PS5. It sounds like Sony's really trying to, you know, find new ways to allow developers to kind of advertise their games, I guess you could say, for free by leveraging players. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I know it was kind of long, but a lot of information to unpack here. Let me know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below. I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Again, leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.